Hello, women of Eden Codes, and anybody else that's watching this. I am Kasey, and I am here with Kelli Hughart today. And Kelli, tell us a little bit about what you do in life, what your mission is here, and what you're bringing to the community, and what you do, for a living and for passion. And start there, and then we'll flow.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being here and just being present with me in this moment. I honor you and I want to thank you for that. And I am a clinical hypnotherapist, board certified in hypnosis, but I've been doing all things holistic for about 40 years now because I'm old. I'm also a phytotherapist, so I integrate, phytotherapy into my integrative practice. And so, and again, I've just been doing all things holistic, like I said, for about 40 years now. And my practice is an integrative wellness practitioner, basically, the terminologies are relevant. But what I'm passionate about, most people know hypnosis to like stop smoking or like to lose weight. And while it is good for that, yes, my passion and my zone of genius is helping women who have been on the other end of like narcissistic abuse or intimate partner violence, and that's what my dissertation is on, is complex PTSD as a highly sensitive person because I'm an HSP, so I work with HSP, empaths, sensitive intuitives, and helping them navigate complex post-traumatic stress disorder and burnout because it looks differently for us than it does neurotypical people, and we often don't get the help that we need. A lot of times people throw medications at us or therapy at us, and while those things may be valuable for some people, it's been my experience, not only as personally, but with my clients and my research as well, is I've noticed that HSPs respond differently, and those things often don't help them, and we need forward motion. So that's how I got actually into this. Was I was unfortunately a part of a very bitter divorce, and I was a part of a situation where I was basically a part of narcissistic abuse for about 30 years. So yeah,
30 years of that.
roughly, yes. Yes, give or take ish.
Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to shout out to the universe for aligning us right now because you just described me. I only had to do the narcissistic abuse, and mine was psychological and physical for 2 years. I can't imagine 30 years. And I am also an HSP and late diagnosed autistic, late diagnosed
Yep.
neurodivergent.
Yep.
So I'm like, I can't believe we're here. And I went traditional therapy and medications. They had me on at one point like 7 to 8 mental health medications. And I got down to my knees to God one day and I just said, I'm doing what they're telling me to do. I'm
Mhm.
getting worse. And it was just
Yep.
not a fit. That treatment did not work for me. And so I'm looking at you and I'm like, where were you? And I was looking because it needed to be someone like you. And people don't
Yeah.
understand that. They just say go to therapy, go see a psychiatrist. And I go, you don't understand. We need a
Yes.
different fit. So I think it's
Yes.
great that you're doing that. So how did you get into this? If you want to tell a little bit more about your story, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I will say this, there's a trigger warning here for suicide ideation, just so if your listeners are listening and they're not in a space that that is okay with them, they can pause, they can come back to the video later, go take care of yourself, whatever you need to do. But what happened with me was, I was obviously I was an HSP, and I found myself with every type of abuse that you could imagine. Not a lot of physical, just some minor physical, but even physical is enough, right? Even 1 or 2 times is still 1 or 2 times too many, but a lot of mine was psychological, so, there was a lot of serial cheating going on, not by me, obviously, a lot of gaslighting because I'm crazy and all the things, and then there was a lot of financial abuse, and I remember I always try to tell this without crying, but I'm so happy now, but I remember I was doing the therapy, I was doing all the things, right? Like, just yeah, like you're
Hmm.
doing the right things, and I was worse. So I would lose a day before therapy, the day of, and then the day after I couldn't work, I couldn't sleep. I had nightmares for I remember talking to my therapist, and while she validated my experience, very lovely person, I don't have any hard feelings or anything. But I remember telling her my story, and with all these nightmares I had had for many, many years, I had night terrors. Can't tell you how many times I almost broke my neck falling down the steps. True story. And so I remember, doing the right things. My now ex was like, "You're crazy. You need mental help. You need to go and find help." What I didn't realize was that would open the door for me to realize that I was living in a war zone daily. And so she was like, "You have PTSD." Well, I come to understand later after my research through my doctoral program that it was actually complex PTSD because my childhood ACE scores were high as well. Adverse childhood experiences for those that you don't have to go Google it. And I remember I was at my property down in Virginia. It was just raw land at that point. I didn't have anything on it, and I reached in my glove box and I reached in my glove box for my protection weapon, and I walked around with it through my head for about an hour and a half. It gets better, trust me. And I was just there and I was like, "I can't do this." I didn't have any money. Later on, I would find myself homeless, no alimony, etc. And I had this voice, this whisper, and the whisper said, "Look up," because I couldn't even look up. And when I looked up, I saw the clouds. And in the shape of those clouds was the shape of my grandbaby's face, my grandbaby number 1. I now have multiple, but I looked up and I was like, "I can't do this. I don't know what I'm gonna do, and I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I'm not staying here." And like I said, therapy wasn't working, nothing was working, and I was like, "Screw this," only that's not the word language I used. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way. And as an herbalist, I'm a master herbalist, master aromatherapist. Like I said, I've been on all things holistic for a bazillion years. I was like, okay, let's stop for a minute. Let's start on the herbal therapy. Let's start on aromatherapy. And so I started on this journey of aromatherapy and herbalism. And I had just started my PhD program and I had just signed up for the hypnosis part of that. And so then I hired a trauma-informed coach. I was like, I was a coach. I'm a functional medicine, certified functional medicine health coach. And I'm like, I know coaches work. That's what I need to be. And so I did, and then later got certified in that method of coaching for people who, have had this. And then as I started layering in hypnosis, I was like, because I still was having that, I had probably about an 85% success rate with the aromatherapy, the herbalism, and the coaching. I was probably about an 85%, which was still better than what I was. I wasn't complaining about that. But my last little thing was I couldn't get rid of those darn pesky nightmares.
Mm.
And at this point, I can't even tell you how many years they had been, right? And I was like, well, let's see if hypnosis will work for this. And so I developed my own script and I started listening to a recording. And within a month, the nightmares were gone. And
Wow.
after that, I just got better and better and better. And we still do this work because we do this work all the time. Like I still do the shadow work, right? I still go, oh, I noticed that. Where is that in my body? What do I need to do? But I was like, I guarantee you there's somebody out there like me. And I just couldn't imagine not helping somebody else. So after I got, better, I was like, I'm going to integrate. I had actually paused. I was a practicing herbalist. So before I did this, I just saw, people in herbalism. And I was like, I bet you I could integrate this in and people would see a lot more forward motion. And I started writing a book. And I just did like an ebook at first, which it is out. And right now I'm working with an editor to republish that and like kind of beef that up. And from there, I started seeing clients, one-on-one clients. And then after that, I started helping other people. And I was like, okay, now I've got to get this out more so. And so then I developed a group program based on all this so that no matter where somebody is in their journey, they at least have some access to some support. And I remember thinking one of the first lady that hired me, she was also had gone through this as well. And, I remember she called me one day and she started crying and she said, "I came out of court," and she said, "I was calm as a cucumber, and I never thought I could do that," and she just cried, and she said, "Thank." I said, "Look, I just wanted to at least help one person." That was it. That was my goal. If I could just help one person through this. And of course, now I'm going on to help hundreds of people. But yeah, it was me. I was stuck. I didn't get any help and I knew that it ain't worth dying over. Ain't nobody worth dying over. And honestly, genuinely, and I can say this, you could put me on a lie detector tests. I'm literally the happiest I've ever been.
You look happy and you have
Mm.
such a powerful story. And um, I'm so grateful for humans and women like you that are doing this, because I didn't even know it was available. And so I want to get the word out to people. Like, you don't have to go the traditional route. There are other ways, because especially for us HSPs. Okay, so one thing I wanted to ask you, because I think it's really important that people know that these are two separate things, and what they are separately, and kind of the overlap. So PTSD and then CPTSD, they are
Yes.
different, and a lot of people don't know that. And I was wondering if you could kind of talk about those two.
Yeah, just to sort of surmise it very concisely and not go on to pages and pages of the dissertation, right? Typically, PTSD is, and I don't even like the term disorder, so I'm going to go on public and say it should not be complex post traumatic stress disorder. It should be injury.
Mm,
Because it's
mm,
not the disorder is not on us, we have been on the other end of it. Same thing with PTSD, I think it should be post-traumatic stress injury, and I talked with one of the top psych docs in West Virginia, David Clayman, and he and I had this conversation. I was like, "So I'm not the only one that has that thought." Hopefully he doesn't care if I mention his name, but anyway, so PTSD in and of itself is typically a one incident. Like, God forbid, you should have a car accident, right? And you got rear-ended, and then you have those intrusive thoughts every time somebody gets close to you. So that's PTSD. But complex PTSD, this is the idea that you're actually the analogy that I like to use is think about if you've ever marinated a steak or a piece of chicken. You put it in the little solution, you ziplock the bag, you put it in the refrigerator, you massage it, you leave it in there. So this is the idea of being marinated in trauma for durations. So slavery, human trafficking, church religions even, not necessarily churches, and I mean, like any religious organization that is toxic, religious trauma can actually lead towards people choosing the wrong spouse later on or the wrong partners later on because it sets you up for it. So there's a lot of different things that can actually cause complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is the idea that you don't get a rest. It's a constant state and your nervous system is constantly under attack because like gaslighting, abuse, you don't get a rest from that type of thing, right? This is a constant thing. So that's sort of the difference. Hopefully that's clear that PTSD is typically one, and actually in the DSM-5 now, I think we're on 5, don't quote me on that, and this recording might be another one by now. They finally do, CPTSD does now have its own ICD-9, whereas it used to not. So they used to categorize even complex PTSD would have been considered PTSD. But now I believe it does have its own ICD-9, its own ID code. And so this is the idea that it's long term, typically childhood trauma, unfortunately, sexual abuse. A lot of the clients I work with have chosen partners because of abuse from childhood, which crushes them, makes them feel unworthy, and then those other predators come in and latch on.
mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, there is such a big difference, and I love that example that you gave with the steak and the marinating. Another thing I wanted to ask you too, burnout. When we get ourselves to a place of burnout, it is so difficult to maintain relationships, friendships, self-care, just basic needs. So how do
Yeah.
you treat burnout? Because for me personally, getting out of burnout was something that I was like, okay, I need to treat this whole system or something because I need to pick me up, and I still struggle with it to these days. So what is burnout, and what do you suggest to get yourself out of it or to prevent it from happening so often?
Well, HSP burnout is different than neurotypical people, which is something that most people don't understand. So for HSPs, empaths, intuitive, sensitives, whatever terminology you like, I kind of put them all in the same. But so for a neurotypical person, burnout might look like sleeping in on Saturday morning, that 2 hour extra nap. But with an HSP or someone who feels things deeply and intimately, that 2 hour nap is not going to cut it. So for us, it can also lead to chronic illnesses, which is what happened in my case. The level of abuse that I sustained actually led to triggering a chronic illness. And so now, I work with chronic illness clients as well, and most of the time that's a lot of it. But burnout for like a neurotypical person, like I said, they can sleep in and they're good to go. But with an empath, a HSP, and intuitive, or neurodivergent people, it looks radically different because it can actually show up as stuttering. It can show up as loss of executive function and not knowing where you are or whatnot. So I actually ended up, when I think about this, I think, man, I really am grateful for where I am, but I actually ended up in the emergency room. Um, I passed out, didn't know who I was, didn't know where I was. They took me to the emergency room. And the doctor tested me for drugs and alcohol because I must be drunk or whatever. And of course, all that came back clean. I was already working with a cardiologist, and I was like, please call my, when I finally did come to, they said, I said, call my cardiologist. No, we're not doing that. And so it, burnout for us is full on physical. I mean, it can literally, you can start stuttering, you can not sleep, you can have nightmares. It is not just the matter of, it can trigger chronic illness. It's not just the idea of burnout from neurotypical people who can, and I'm not taking away from them, that everybody needs help, but it's at a deeper level. And those people who don't stutter can start stuttering. So the second time I had to go to the emergency room for HSP burnout, which I still was, trying to do all, when you're in a doctoral program and you have to work because you've lost all your money, you just have to do what you have to do. But one of them, they thought I was having a stroke. So they took me in, they did all the stroke stuff, and I didn't have a stroke, but I was on full on burnout. IBS, that shows up for HSPs and burnout. Chronic migraines, yeah, that shows up for HSPs. I'm just going to use the term HSP for future, just but the conglomerates there. Um, Not being able to sleep, that crash, like at 3 p.m., that's even worse for HSPs, whereas a lot of people could just have a cup of coffee or whatnot. But sometimes that crash might last for days. So because I used to do wildlife. I do wildlife rehab. I don't do as much as I used to, but I used to do a lot of wildlife rehab. So one of the analogies that I use, this idea that HSPs, we really have to pull into our turtle shell.
Mhm.
Like, we have to pull in, we have to nourish, nourish, nourish. We need more than that than the average person and neurotypical people. So pulling into your turtle shell, more self-care, and we need tools to deal with that. So, like, I just developed a program called the Anxiety Detox, where I just teach some little easy tools that can help really just gently reset the nervous system. But really, what we're doing here in all the things, we have to really, really be mindful of that nervous system, be mindful of how it's being impacted, because that is going to then have secondary and tertiary effects on the body and whatnot.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And it all goes hand in hand. And you won't convince me otherwise that this
It
approach,
does.
your approach, is the way to heal it. It's the way to heal it. It's the other methods just for this, they don't work. And nervous system regulation is so vital to our overall health. And I think one thing that's really nice about this interview specifically and what you're doing is you're bringing awareness to this because
Yeah.
we when you a lot of us live with neurotypicals, and it is very difficult to advocate for ourselves because
Yes.
we're just labeled as lazy or unmotivated, all of the things, and then we internalize that and we have the shame, and advocating for ourselves and asking for what we need is vital for us. It's you have to make yourself a priority. And I didn't know if that was something that you teach people, or what you teach people as far as self-care. What is the most important thing for us HSPs to do for self-care?
Yeah, a lot of people, and it's real hard work, and and especially for neurotypical people to not understand it, you get those labels, right? So having someone that understands it, that you can sort of like pull in their information and be like, yeah, I understand that this is how you do things, but this is what the research says, or so and so works with HSPs, and this is how we are. The thing is, especially for HSPs, often it is hard for us to stand up for ourselves because we've been taught typically, and especially as women, this is a societal thing too. I'm just going to give a little shout out to institutional misogyny here, right? Because we are still, it's like, well, what does that make a difference? And I've literally, when I was married, there was a time where I literally had he actually stepped over my body laying in the floor to walk out the door to go play racquetball with a friend, where I'm literally laying on the floor, throwing up and can't even move. So there has I don't want to say there has to, it sounds very strong, but really what I would invite people to do is to really, really like sit down and really say, what does this look like for me? What do I need? Because number one, you can't advocate for your needs if you don't know what they are. Number two, advocating for your needs, especially when you have research and or people that is their zone of genius, can often be that tool because it comes from somebody else, not you.
Mm.
And sometimes neurotypical people have to hear it from a different viewpoint and it shouldn't be that way, but sometimes it is that way.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about this too. So there seems to be this magnetism between HSPs, empaths, and narcissists.
I knew you were going to ask me that.
They seem to just attract each other.
Yeah.
So speak a little bit as to why that happens, because it does. It happens so often.
Yeah. The research, we really don't know as far as what the literature says and the research. However, we know that you have to have money to study and be able to do the literature on, and there could be more literature out on it now. But number one, HSPs are very deep feeling. They want to help. They want to, typically, most of the ones I meet are like world changers. They want to do things to make the world a better place. And narcissists are master manipulators. So I want to say this for anybody who might be watching, because this was hard for me. This is not a you problem. This is a master manipulator problem. Yeah.
Mhm.
And they are master manipulators. I found out about 5 or 6 years into my marriage that I was actually stalked. That's actually how we met in college. The person went and got the registrar to give my classes so that they could strategically place themselves outside of each one of my class. So it looked like serendipity and it was meant to be. But yeah, these are master manipulators, and they will they're attracted because of our kindness, because of our willingness to show up. But is there science behind it? And there may be, somebody else might chat in there and say, yeah, this is it, and that's great. But honestly, I think it's this idea that they're such master manipulators and that we're such kind-hearted people, and we want to believe that everybody's like us and be kind and genuine, and they just take advantage of it. But that
Mhm.
connection, and that could be something even on like a spiritual level too. There could be like a spiritual level thing there as well, that that I don't know, but it it does seem to be. Now, I do want to say this, that not everybody's a narcissist. Just because you don't agree with somebody doesn't make them a narcissist. Um, and we know that the terminology is, there's not a lot of percentage of actual diagnoses, but let's face it, people with narcissists and sociopaths don't typically go and get help and get diagnosed. So I like to use the word toxic relationships in place of, but nonetheless, I think you understand where I'm going with that. If the end result is the same, that you now have complex PTSD because you have a master manipulator, then I think we could probably all agree that who cares what the actual diagnosis is.
Absolutely. Wow. So if somebody comes to you and they are just, at rock bottom where you've been before, where I've been before, they've tried everything, where do you start with them? How do you start healing them and offering them your wisdom and your lived experience, which is the medicine too? I don't want
Yeah.
to discredit that in any way.
Well, and that's the thing too, like I met somebody not too long ago and they looked at my license plate because my license plate says hypnosis and then my other vehicle says hypnotic. And they're like, "You do hypnosis?" And I said, "Yeah." And they were like, "I've actually been looking for someone." And I said, "Oh, well, tell me a little bit more about that." And they're like, "Well, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder." And I was like, "Oh, well, there you go. Let's open this door and conversation about it, right?" And so, I ultimately, the first thing is validating their experience. Letting them know they're not crazy because they were told they were crazy for years. They were gaslit for years. Whatever. They've had enough abuse. So the first thing is being that solid person for them, like being the rock and validating their experience. And then from there, we really need to, if we want to move forward and that person is ready to move forward, then the next step, and when I'm working with someone, the next step is I teach them tools um, within my integrative hypnosis practice of self-directed neuroplasticity because we know that neuroplasticity, which is just a fancy word for saying the brain has the ability to adapt and change. I want to give them tools because they're often ruminating all the time, right? It's just that constant cycle of those thoughts. They have that person in their head all the time. They need to know how to deal with that. What are the tools to deal with that? And then I teach the science behind it because when people know the science behind it, they're more likely to do it. And so I explain to them the science behind it. So I teach tools, bilateral stimulation, hypno EMDR, havening techniques. I g I got more tools than a musician at this but we just kinda start, we talk a little bit, but we definitely don't wanna keep telling that story over and over again because it's kinda like the dog that runs the fence. You're gonna have that grass rutted out and grass is never gonna grow. We wanna get a new path. We want to get a new neural pathways. And so when we do that through hypnosis and through neuroplasticity, not only do we get post-traumatic growth, but what we end up doing is we start not going down that pathway anymore. So if you've ever been down a road where 3 trucks have gone before you and it's rained for 3 days and 3 pickup trucks and you drive a little sports car, you're not getting down that road. You're gonna get stuck in the mud. That's the way the brain is. You get in that path, you're stuck. What do we need to do? We wanna go there. So that's fine, we just find a different way. And when we do that, those synapses meet, they kiss, and then they meet again, and then before you know it, they're meeting and kissing, and before you know it, the new synapses are married together and those things fade. Now, it doesn't mean you're never going to have a bad day, right? Because we live in an imperfect world with imperfect people. But what it does mean is now you have the tools and now you're not keep going down that road anymore. You're finding a new road. And so whether they working with like the group program or whether they're working with me one-on-one, which if they work with me one-on-one, it's automatic that they're in the group program. But I want to make sure they have the tools. I heard Melissa Tiers say this, and I love this analogy. It's like getting somebody out of a burning house. We've got to get them out of the burning house. And then after we get them out of the burning house, now we can teach them step by step how to rebuild that house. And that's what I do.
So the hypnosis aspect of it, and I've never done any of this, so I'm ignorant to some of it. Is that like a one-time session, or is that multiple sessions that we work, through time in conjunction with the other tools, and it's a whole process?
Yeah, typically, one session, it's like going to the gym and working out one time.
Yeah.
You know, so typically what I like to do is I start depend on what they're working on. So, but typically, and now if it's a chronic, if someone is coming to me and they have a chronic condition from this, then that is usually we work about 3 months together. But if there's no chronic stuff going on, then I'll at least a minimum start them on 4 sessions, get them good and started. They have the group program, and then if we need to add on, we can. A lot of times 4 sessions is enough. Sometimes maybe we do 6, but that's really where we talk with where they are, and navigate where that is. But most of the time, I think at this point, we can do quite a bit in 4 sessions.
That's awesome. Another
Especially
thing
if
that
I also teach them. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
oh,
but
no, no, you're good.
yeah, but I also make sure all of my clients know how to do self-hypnosis. So they
Ooh,
get that
awesome.
tool. Yeah, so they get that tool in between time, and then, they have access to the group, and then if they're working in between, like I said, maybe we might have to tag on a couple, but a lot of times 4 session is a nice, good, solid start.
Okay, neat. One thing I've noticed, and this is just from my life experience, and collecting data because I'm so passionate about this work, I have noticed that HSPs often have what I've noticed EDS, POTS, mast cell activation syndrome seem to be very common. So have you noticed that too? I noticed you're
Well,
laughing.
I'm laughing because I'm undiagnosed EDS, but check out the thumb. I am diagnosed with dysautonomia POTS, and I do have mast cell activation syndrome as well.
So I'm
So
onto
that
something
so
here.
for like, so if I had somebody like that, then that has to be like we have to do like a 3-month. We have to do a lot of intensive work around that because there's a lot of other things that we're bringing. But yeah, it is not uncommon at all.
I've noticed that it seems to those diagnoses seem to go hand in hand with HSPs, and
Yep.
I'm wondering, have you our fascia and healing? Does our fascia play a role in our overall healing of our body, our physical body?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is the thing, even though we might not always want to believe that. But here's the thing. We are not, I heard David Winston, one of my herbal educators, say this a bazillion years ago, and he said a heart doesn't walk into a cardiologist's office, right? And a mind doesn't walk into a hypnotherapist. We are a whole person. And everything is mind, body, and spirit, which is the beauty of mind body medicine, and we're on equal footing with conventional medicine. It's modern, it's new, it's an evolutionary approach to medicine. But with mind body medicine, we're looking at every aspect, right? We want to we want to make sure that we're teaching breath work so that they have that tool. We want to make sure that we're teaching meditation or showing them how to do that to keep that those little so that we can keep that HSP out of burnout. Like I meditate in the morning. I do 20 minutes of self-hypnosis in the afternoon usually, and then I do at least 5 to 10 minutes evening. Plus I'm a Reiki master, so I always do Reiki before I go to bed. But anyway, yes, those all of those tools. I mean, as somebody who does have a diagnosis, I can tell you I was almost, I mean, like literally physically in the worst shape. Like I was married to the couch. I couldn't even get out of bed. But when I started integrating these tools and doing this work, the dysautonomia, I don't attach it to myself, even though it is an actual diagnosis. But it has made a huge difference to do this work and do this healing. Doesn't mean I don't have a bad day, but and I do have a service dog just in case I need him, but most of the time I don't. But yes, all those things, unfortunately, because we are a whole person, you can't take out one part. And with mind body medicine specifically, one of the more sciencey terms is like psychoneuroimmunology, and the idea is that everything does work together,
Mm,
whether we like it or not.
yeah,
Sorry, you're
that's
mad
so
now.
fascinating. I wanted to ask you too, and this was you mentioned this at the beginning of the interview, but I wrote it down and I'm going to pronounce it wrong. But you said you do hypnotherapy and then the other one that starts with a P, phytotherapy, or what was it?
Phytotherapy, which is
What
just
is
a
that?
fancy word for saying plant-based medicine, aromatherapy, herbalism, flower essences. So I integrate flower essences, herbalism, and aromatherapy all into my practice. It's just a fancy term. Phytotherapy, phyto mean plant, plant therapy. That's it.
So you really are engaging a lot of the five senses and the sixth sense and the sixth sense too. You're incorporating that too. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic because we get so disconnected from those and we don't realize the power of these simple things that we can do. Sometimes it is just that simple as, smelling the right aromatherapy. That's pulled me out of the day.
Yeah, and in my group program, I teach, and in my dissertation, I I'm giving my recipe, but in my group program, like I teach them how to make a nasal inhaler, so they can carry that around, and and how to like what flower essences might be good as well. And the thing about it is the reason why for me, and it sounds like for you as well, and a lot of HSPs, and I'll talk about this again in my dissertation, is a lot of us actually have ADRs, like adverse drug reactions. So we can't take what other people can. We have to have a different route. Well, phytotherapy offers that. And of course, if you're with somebody who has extensive knowledge in that, like somebody like me who's been doing it a bazillion years, then that person can recommend something that's based on your constitution, on where you are, and now you get the support that you deserve without the side effects or without having to go through a bunch of different meds that may not be working. Or one of my clients, right after I finished my certification in hypnosis, came in. His psych doc gave him medication that made him suicidal. He was an HSP too, made him suicidal. He called his psych doc and said, I can't take this. I'm suicidal. The psych doc said, stay on it no matter what. So he calls me, and this was during COVID. And I was like, okay. He's like, I need help. I don't know how it's going to go. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do it. I mean, I can't leave somebody with nothing.
Yeah.
Especially if
Yeah.
they've gone, and I can't tell you how many times, like, because I do this, I've been doing this for a while. I cannot tell you how many times I hear it over and over and over again. Kelly, I've been in therapy 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and I'm still not making forward motion. Honey, you don't need to be putting their kids through college.
Hmm.
I'm not saying your therapist is bad. I'm sure they're a lovely person, but if you need somebody to talk to, that's fine, but if you're not having forward motion, then you're with the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes, and to each their own. I try to have that perspective, and I'll tell you just something personable about me. Like I told you, I was late diagnosed ADHD and autism on the
Yeah,
spectrum. So ADHD, which is so walking contradiction. And I'm 38 now, but for 15 years, I just wanted to get out of my body. I hated it. So I drank. I ended up being full blown alcoholism for 15 years because I just didn't know who I was, what was wrong with me, attracted the narcissist during that time. So you can
wow,
imagine. And I've been sober for 5 years. And then I went on for the first 2 years of my sobriety, I did it the therapy and the medication way. And I was
yeah,
worse than when I was drinking, and I had suicidal thoughts and everything. And
yeah,
then I decided to do it this way because even with the drinking, the program after that was AA, and it was not healing the root. It was just maintenance. And I was supposed to go to AA twice a week, every day if I needed to for the rest of my life. And I thought,
yeah,
I'm a slave to this. Now I'm a slave to the healing. I've stopped the toxic stuff, and now I'm a slave to this healing format that just isn't working for me. It is not giving me a quality of life that is even worth living. And so I just feel that it's so important for women like you or humans like you to offer this because we're in a crisis with this state. There is such a need for it, and people don't know where to turn. In the
yeah,
suicide rates, when we look at statistics for women like us, it's scary and it's
is,
heartbreaking. It
it
really
is,
is. So awareness needs to be brought to this. So we have about 5 or 10 minutes left. So I'll just let you talk about anything that you want to
yeah.
bring forward or speak on. You can tell us about your business or whatever you want to bring forward.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say at towards the end of my situation, I ended up started drinking, and that was one reason why I was like, I'm not doing this. If I have to drink this much to stay in my marriage, then there's something wrong. My ex was, I don't know, whatever, alcoholic, self-medicated on many different levels, like I said, plus, other things that were very, very inappropriate. But, and that's when I started going to therapy was with the alcohol. And of course, that didn't work. And then I did this, but like, I definitely get that because if you're not getting help, you reaching for something to numb the pain. And And then I'm not saying my method is the only method or anything like that, but the method that I chose to heal and that my clients work through as well, especially with neuroplasticity, they come to me and they're like, "Kelly, I'm not drinking as much. I'm drinking less, or I'm not, smoking weed or whatever." And so I to give people an option, I think it's important. And
Mhm.
and and I'm very passionate about it. But so yeah, I was just going to validate your experience on that. It's not uncommon. I've heard that quite a bit as well. But yeah, so just wanted to thank you for having me, and let everybody know where you can find me. That way, if you are interested or if you know somebody, I do have a free group as well on Facebook. So like I do have a totally no cost group. No cost. Come and visit whatever. Sit a spell. We'd love to have you, and if not, that's okay too. But as far as my work with my clients, I do work one on one with clients. I do have a group program that is very excellent. It's low cost entry because I do want to be that. I do want people to have access to it. And then I recently developed just a little mini program called the Anxiety Detox. Actually, it was based off of a client, somebody who was coming in, and they wasn't ready to work with me, and I was like, "Oh, I just need to do like a little mini thing so that way people can have something." So you can go to my website, kellyhughart.com. I'm Sweetwater Wellness Center, wherever it is on the thing,
Yeah, that's it.
wherever it is on the thing. Yeah, and I do have free stuff. I have blogs. I have a lot of blogs totally free that talk about narcissism. I'm getting ready to finish up the book, so that'll be coming out. And then my next book, which I'm hopefully is I'm going to do a book on how to regain the intimacy after narcissistic abuse, because that is a big thing. And I don't talk about that in the first book because like I said, we got to get you out of the burning house. But my next book is going to be rebuilding intimacy after that and what that looks like. And I'm also certified in sex hypnosis for sexual issues as well. And so, like, I've just been bringing in everything just to give people as they can, as much as they want to heal, because I know what it was like to be there, and I would not want anybody to not have access to it.
Wow, you've literally turned your pain into power, and
Oh,
I see myself in you, and it's so refreshing and amazing, and it gives me hope that I'm on this journey to bring something forward to the world in the same way that you are. So
yes.
it was an honor to sit here and talk with you, and I just thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
and I wish you all the best of luck in everything, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate more Schwartz bow to you, and thank you very much. And yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. We'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks.
Bye
Bye.
bye.